I'm James Gardner, host of Your History, Your Story, a podcast for everybody who loves stories about interesting people and events told by those who uncovered them from within their own family trees. This, we hope, will inspire you to discover and celebrate your history and your story.
Welcome to Your History, Your Story. As we enter the 2022 Christmas season, many of us will be decorating our homes, purchasing gifts, listening to our favorite holiday music, and settling our plans to visit and celebrate with friends and loved ones. However, as we busy ourselves with many activities of the season, we should pause to remember Christmases from long ago and reflect on how those memories and traditions from our childhood remain in our hearts and still bring us comfort and joy today. In this episode of Your History, Your Story, we will be speaking with friends from around the world who will share their special childhood memories and Christmas traditions from their home countries. Our guests will be Kattia Roman from Costa Rica, Baba Oluyemi from Nigeria, Marje Zayas from Estonia, Dara Kelly from Ireland, and World War II veteran John Luckadoo, who grew up in Tennessee. Our host, James Gardner, will also share a story about his favorite childhood Christmas. We hope these stories will inspire you to reflect on your own Christmas memories and will bring warmth and happiness to you and your loved ones as you gather together to celebrate Christmas this year.
I'd now like to welcome Kattia Roman to our Christmas podcast. Welcome, Kattia.
Thank you for having me, James.
Well, very glad to have you. I want to start off, Kattia, by asking you about where you're from, Costa Rica. Tell us a little bit about your country.
I am from the beautiful country of Costa Rica. Costa Rica is in Central America. We're between Panama and Nicaragua. Costa Rica is a very beautiful, peaceful country. We are one of the only countries in the world that has no army. And I believe 40% of our rainforest is protected wildlife. So it is a very beautiful and green place.
Really? Now, whereabouts in Costa Rica did you live?
So I am actually from a very small town that's called Quemado de Cajón, de San Isidro General. So the translation to that would be burn drawer. I don't know why. And drawer will be actually the bigger town. And then my town will be like a part of it. So it is a very, very tiny town. We had one school. It was split into two shifts, first, second, and third grade, 4th, 5th, and 6th, half in the afternoon because we had like 3 classrooms. We had 2 stores. At the time where I lived there, which was a while back, we had like one phone, which was like the public phone at the time. So it is a very isolated, smaller town, I think, compared to most people if they live in the capital or, the provinces in Costa Rica.
Great. So tell me something. When did you actually come to the United States, Kattia?
I came to the United States when I was 10.
10 years old. And what brought you here?
So my father came here a year before we did. At the time, my father was a landowner in Costa Rica. He owned coffee farms. And, it was like one of those years where the coffee wasn't doing well. We had recently opened one of the food stores. Mm-hmm. And he got to the point where he could no longer afford the loans and stuff. So we had family here. They said, you know what, come over, work for a year, pay your debts, and then kind of go back. Once my father was here for a year, he decided that he wanted the younger kids, which was 3 of us, to come and learn to speak English. And because we were so young, that it should take us about a year, no pressure. So he brought us so we could learn to speak English so that we will have more opportunities back home. At the time, that was 25 years ago, and I'm still here, so I'm not really sure what happened to that plan. But we ended up coming here. My sisters got married, and it just kind of evolved into our whole family being here.
Do you go back to Costa Rica at all?
I've been back a couple of times. I've been back, I want to say 4 times so far. The last time we went, I was able to take my kids back with me, and that was really beautiful because I actually got to take them back to my hometown and actually experience the life because we were there for about 21 days, which is a little bit different if you just go there as, a tourist for a week or, you're in a resort. And I kind of got to show them a little bit how I grew up and, kind of the life there, which is a lot more calm.
How did that feel for you to have them see that?
It felt great, I think, just for them to kind of see, hey, this is like the tree I used to climb, or this is the school I used to go to, or, the town that we have our house in. It's all my family or from my mom's side. So it was kind of like, that's your aunt and that's your cousin. And for them, it was, I think, overwhelming at times because there's so much family to me.
So, Kattia, this is our Christmas podcast. So I
Mm-hmm.
know you were pretty young when you came to the United States. You said 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about in Costa Rica, typically, how do people celebrate Christmas?
Christmas in Costa Rica is a big deal. So our school year doesn't run the way it does here. So I think it starts in like February and ends in like November. So really our summer or the kids' summer is Christmas time. So it's like the end of November, December, and January. So all of December, the kids are off from school. The whole month, I want to say very few people work. It's kind of just like a festivity is we're planning for the big event. Leading up to it, there's, a national food that we eat. I think most countries in Central and South America eat is tamales, which is corn masa, and it has meat and it has vegetables in it, but it's wrapped in a banana leaf.
Mm.
Yes, and then it's cooked in water. So one of the things that we would do, at least one of my memories growing up, was that, the uncles would go and cut down the banana leaves, and then the kids will hold them over to where the fire was because you needed to put them over the fire to soften them up.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of our jobs would be to either carry the banana leaves to the fire. The other people would be to hold the banana leaf over the fire, which is very safe, by the way. And then the other one would be wiping down the banana leaf so they could be used to wrap the tamal.
Well, that sounds real. I'd like to try that sometime.
Cutting the banana leaves or
No,
the tamal?
eating the finished result.
Yeah. Now that I look back at it, I'm like, I don't think that stuff was that safe for our age group because there was, a bunch of kids running around a fire and, holding flammable stuff to it. So
What could possibly go
what
wrong?
could possibly be wrong? And that was totally normal. That was just kind of like, and it didn't matter how old you were, like you were just part of the activity. Like one of the things I will say growing up in Costa Rica is like your age didn't stop you from doing things. It was like
Right.
if you were gonna go walk in the rainforest, then you just went with the older cousins and they kind of make sure you didn't die. It was never like, hey, my kids too, you can't go. It was like, no, the bigger cousins will take care of it. We mostly survived.
They got it. What about as far as gift giving, it was Christmas Day, the day of gift giving, or was it the Epiphany?
So for us is the 24th. And one of the differences between us and I think America is we do not celebrate Santa Claus. We do baby Jesus. El
Okay.
Niñito Jesús, it will be. So growing up, we knew that El Niñito Jesús will bring us our gifts. So there was at the time, like Coca-Cola commercials that would have like Santa Claus on and stuff like that. And we kind of were aware of that. But to us, that was never who will bring our gifts. It will always be El Niñito Jesús. So the baby Jesus will come and bring our gifts. How did a baby do it? We didn't ask questions. And we would kind of get the gifts the 24th. So all our celebrations are done the 24th.
Yeah. And what would happen typically on Christmas Day?
We kind of just play with the toys at that point, when we open up the gifts. Some people open up the gifts the 24th, some people do the 25th. It depends. Usually what would happen is because I come from a very large family and we had one of the bigger houses, we were usually playing outside most of the time. They would send the kids to sing to the North Star with the older kids. And then we would just sing and walk. And, in Costa Rica, you can kind of see all the stars. So it's very different. But there's the North Star that you can see during Christmas time automatically. So that's like baby Jesus star to us. So we would just go and sing to it. And when we would get back, the gifts are there. Or depending if we were not celebrating with family, we would go to sleep and we woke up, the gifts were there. It really depended on kind of how the family played it out. But mostly I want to say we got one gift. Like that was it. Like you got one gift. It wasn't everybody gave you gift. Your parents did not give you gifts. It was definitely, baby Jesus did it.
Oh, that's really cool. And I'm thinking to myself, you've had the whole month off.
Yeah.
Makes it even better, right?
Yeah. So you do. you really do get to enjoy it with family because that's your summer. So that's our relaxed time. I always make a joke and I'm like, if you go to my country, do not go and get surgery during Christmas time or December because you're going to have the B team. Because really, it's not, even if you need like documents from the government, you're probably not going to get them in December. Like they really do have like a skeleton crew. And, really, Christmas is Christmas and that's it, like most of the month. We do celebrate in general. Like I think our elections is like a week of party, like just parties.
I
So
love that.
yeah, so it's just like, oh, this candidate bought me this. And, that's really any time they can celebrate or use a holiday, we definitely use it.
What I like about that whole vacation thing in December is that here in the United States, as we prepare for Christmas and, we're preparing the menu, we're getting gifts for people. There's office parties. You're going to see this family, you're going to see these friends. And in the meantime, people are all working usually before Christmas. And when all the craziness is going on, it doesn't let you really prepare for Christmas because you're frantically working, but are you really enjoying and relaxing? But it sounds in Costa Rica, at least people are already in that mode of sort of
So I
relaxing.
think for me, it was a little bit different because we just lived in a smaller town. I think maybe if you were in the capital, then yes, it was more, still hectic up to a certain point. But because we were in such a smaller town, we had, it was mostly coffee plantations, coffee farms. So it wasn't, that was kind of the work that people did. So it was not, you could stop and it wasn't the end of the world. However, I think if maybe you were a doctor or a policeman, you still did have those things. But for me and my family personally, we were able to relax more.
That is great. Now, I want to ask you about your personal memories of Christmas. Do you have a couple memories that were special to you when you were a kid during Christmas?
I have like perfect memory, which is terrifying. So I remember most of our Christmases. I think one of my favorite Christmas was the one time that we went to sing to the North Star because it was my uncles were there and they kind of picked a different area of our house had a big front yard, like a specific area where each family will have their kids' gifts, like where El Niñito will bring it. And ours was like by my mom's, she had this giant plant, giant, and that's where our gifts were. So they sent us all to sing. There was a party before we ate. We had arroz con pollo, we had chicharrones, the good stuff, tamales. I'm not a big fan of tamales, but everybody else loves it. And, they send us up. So my house is like at the end of like a hill. So they send us up the hill to look at the stars and sing. And I'm sure the older cousins were in it, but the kids were just so excited. And then just like looking at the North Star and singing. And then by the time we got back, like, oh, Niñito came, it was never, it's not like here where I feel like the kids are always trying to catch Santa Claus. To us, that was never something like, oh, I want to catch Santa Claus in the act because you're not leaving him cookies. He's not sneaking in. It's just baby Jesus is just bringing you gifts. And that's it. That's never something that kind of crosses your mind when we were little. So when we came back, the gifts were there and I got this big doll. Probably wasn't that big now that I'm older, but it was probably like 21 inches and she had this long, beautiful black hair. And, that was a big gift, especially for, somebody who may not be that well off, like my parents. And we were, at the time, we were 6 kids. So my parents had to buy for 6 kids, on maybe not the best salary. So we each of the daughters, because we're 5 daughters, well, at the time we were, now we're 6, got this big doll, and kind of each of them were kind of towards our personality, like kind of like the way they were dressed and stuff. So like mine, whose name was Wendy, and that was such a amazing gift. Like I wish I had that doll so I could like pass it down to my daughter, but we don't.
Thank you for sharing the story about that doll. It must have meant a lot to you.
It did. I can truly say growing up in Costa Rica gave me some beautiful memories. And even though growing up in the United States, it's also very beautiful, I do find that kids don't have the same level of freedom. Like I will go to school and then afterwards you just ran around with your cousins, because everybody in the town knew each other. So, and then you just came home when it was dark. So those are things I feel like kids don't always get here because, you come home from school, then you're cooped up. So it's a lot. I find that it's probably more stressful on them, than they are. So I do think that childhood I had in Costa Rica is something I wouldn't give up for the world.
I can see you welling up a little bit there. And I don't blame you because it sounds like you just had a really wonderful childhood, Kattia.
I did. I was very lucky. And I'm not saying that there wasn't things that happened that were not good, but I think compared to other people that I know, I was very lucky that I had a lot of support and I had, a wonderful family and they gave me great, beautiful memories. For my mother, giving us memories, it was a big deal. And I try to do that with my kids. When we're going to do the tree, I try to bake cookies and make it a big deal. I love Christmas and I think one of the reasons why I love it is because of that. And I really do try hard to make Christmas as special to my kids, but not so much when it comes to gifts, but more when it comes to like meaningful, buying them things, that's specific to them.
That's great. So you mentioned you try to do a lot of the things to make Christmas nice as you recall your own childhood. Are there any specific things from your childhood that you bring to Christmas today? Are there any types of foods or traditions that were from your childhood that you try to repeat
So
here?
my family is very specific in kind of doing that. Like we will get together and make tamales. Now here we buy the banana leaf frozen. So it's a little bit easy. We don't have to go get it and like burn over the fire.
And set it on
We
fire.
still have to wipe down the banana leaves. Like that's very specific. There's always like a way. Like my mom will like defrost them and then we come and somebody has to wipe them down. Now that I'm older, I'm part of the making process. So they'll make the big pot of masa. And somebody usually does the masa and puts it in the banana leaf and wraps it. Then we have to wrap in aluminum foil here so it'll stay in the thing because we can't use as many banana leaves as we would back home. And then somebody else ties because you have to tie two together to boil them. Someone else is in charge of tying them. Somebody else is in charge of making them. I try really hard to do a really bad job at every single one of those jobs every year so that I just won't be invited to make them. Like I like going, but I don't necessarily like making them. So I take my daughter and I'm like, this is how you make them. And then for Christmas, we do make a big deal. We celebrate the 24th. We all get together. A lot more gifts. I would say my kids get a lot more gifts, maybe too many now that I'm looking back on stuff. We have a family party. All the daughters dress up. We just really enjoy dressing up. We take pictures. We look amazing, for the Facebook and the Instagram.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we do. We just, the whole family gets together. Each family gives one at a time. We take the time. Then the kids get to play. We go back upstairs, drink coffee, eat dessert, the usual. But we make a big point to celebrate. Now that I'm married to my husband, who is an American, on the 25th, we go home probably like, I want to say 2, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, depending on how long it took. We sleep for like 3 hours maybe, wake up all over again, and then go to his dad's for the opening of the gifts for the 25th. So we're kind of trying to mesh both cultures in many ways.
So it's fun, but it's exhausting.
It's really exhausting.
Makes you think about looking up at the stars in Costa Rica again, huh?
I do. I do miss that. But when I came to the United States, I think it was like, I want to say November, my first year. My first snowstorm, like the first snow here is something that, I guess when you guys get to experience at a very young age, like I was 10. So I was looking at the news report and looking and waiting for snow, and then when they say it was going to snow and it didn't snow, I was so upset. So when I finally got to experience snow, because that's a big deal, that's a big part of Christmas, to the point that in Costa Rica, we're aware that snow is part of Christmas, because Santa Claus and reindeers, but it's snow, the North Pole, snow. We don't even celebrate Santa Claus, but we are just kind of so hyper-focused on the snow that when I came to America and I got to experience my first Christmas with snow, that was so wonderful. Like, oh my God, like, how does it happen? Because it really, to you guys, it's just, snow. Yeah. But to me at that point, it was really something wonderful.
Well, Kattia, this has been a wonderful conversation, listening to you share your memories about Costa Rica and telling us about your country and some of your old traditions and new traditions. And you've been a wonderful guest, and you're a good friend. So I hope you and your family have a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much, James.
God bless. I'd now like to welcome Baba Oluyemi to our Christmas podcast. Welcome, Baba.
Thank you, James. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, you are from Nigeria, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about your country, just some general things about Nigeria that would be good for us to know.
Yeah, well, let me just start by saying that a lot of things that you might know or think you know about Nigeria is almost always wrong. Because unless you've been there or you know somebody that's really, you are intimately involved with somebody that's from there, it's one of those things that, well, let me just start by saying Nigeria is a country in West Africa, the largest country in terms of population in West Africa, population of about 200 million. That's a lot of Nigerians in the space of Texas and California.
Okay.
So we have more than half of the population of this country in just 2 states. So yes, it is crowded. Nigeria has 200 languages, distinct languages that you don't understand each other. So English is what we call lingua franca, meaning the official language. So virtually everybody speaks English. Very well-educated country because growing up education is always free. And it's a very modern country. Yes, there is poverty. There is a wide gap between the rich and the poor. But when you're in Nigeria, it's like you're in any other Western country. Anything you want is there. Everything, it's just, you just look like a different location. So I still have my family there. My parents are there. 2 of my siblings are there. And I try and go and visit at least once or twice a year.
That's good that you're staying in touch with the family and staying connected so much. Do they ever come to visit you here in the United States?
Yes, they do. My parents are getting up there. My dad turned 90 recently. My mom's 83. So traveling is not the easiest for them. But they were here this year. They spent 6 weeks with me this year. So they try once in a while, but it's always easier for us to maybe meet in England because they can do that 7-hour trip, and then I can also do the same, and then we meet. I have 2 siblings in England, so we usually try and meet over there instead of them coming all the way here.
So how long have you been in the United States, Baba?
31 years.
31 years. Well, what are some of the traditions in Nigeria that are followed during the Christmas season?
Right. So Nigeria is it's almost half and half Christian and Muslim. And the thing about Christmas in Nigeria is that everybody celebrates Christmas. Even the Muslims, it's such a big holiday in Nigeria. Both Christmas Day and Boxing Day, which is the 26th, the day after Christmas, are official holidays. But even Christmas Eve is technically a holiday because nobody shows up at work. So it's almost like you get 3 days off for Christmas. Family gatherings will by far be like the biggest tradition. Everybody leaves where they are to go back to the village or the town they come from to celebrate with parents and grandparents. So, as in this country, the day before Thanksgiving is like the biggest travel day in the country. Well, 2 days before Christmas in Nigeria is like the biggest travel day of the country because people are trying to get back home or get back with family just to spend Christmas with them. And of course, part of that celebration is food, a lot of food. That's when people get to come together. It's like a family reunion of different families. And, of course, family reunions, you get to eat, you get to sit around the table and eat a lot. Christmas lights, decorations are also big in Nigeria. That is a tradition. Virtually everybody has a Christmas tree. We do not have live trees because we don't have the balsam fir trees that are common here or in the Western world. We don't have those. So virtually all Christmas trees are artificial in Nigeria. Virtually all of them. Some are white, some are green, some are yellow. As long as it looks like a tree and we put lights around it, every house has that. And Christmas cards and Christmas, like I mentioned, Christmas gifts are also big. And with Nigeria, we're trying to outdo each other. So sometimes you see Christmas cards as big as 24 inches long, and or sometimes 36 inches long. They're huge Christmas cards because we got to do it bigger. So that's definitely a tradition. And when we come together, it's the traditional Nigerian meals of lots of meats, beef, chicken, mutton, goat meat, accompanied by starchy foods that they often call fufu or pounded yam, with jollof rice, which is like baked rice. These are the most common meals that we have during Christmas. Turkey is rarely served. Growing up, we never had it, but now, recently, I know that it's getting more and more common in Nigeria.
Okay. And what about church? Do the families go to church on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or both?
Sometimes it's both. Most churches usually pick one of them to open Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Now, over the past few years, I don't know, you might have heard in the news that the security situation got kind of worse with this group called Boko Haram and a lot of kidnappings and stuff. As such, most people don't like to go out at night as we used to when we were young. When we were growing up, you can go at any time of the day and nobody worried about anything. So, but right now, you don't really want to be going out late at night. So the Christmas Day service is now the more common option. So you go in the morning and then you come back and feast with the rest of the family.
That's great. Baba, what about the Oluyemi family? When you were a little kid, do you have any specific memories that were really important for you that you look back upon?
Yes. I grew up in a very large household, which looking back was so much fun. There are so many people living with us. So one of the things that we never really got growing up as children was individual Christmas gifts. Birthdays sometimes, but Christmas we never really got individual gifts because there were traditionally or usually 12 to 14 people that lived in our house altogether. But there was one particular year we got up to 17. So my parents had 5 children. There were 5 of us. But because they were relatively well off and we had so many relatives that were not, many of them sent their children to come and live with us. Mm-hmm. It's a very common thing in Nigeria that, you go and live with your richer uncle or aunt and they basically educate you and pay and take care of you. So we had cousins, we had uncles, aunts, we had some non-relatives. So when you have a total of about 17 people in the house, getting individual gifts kind of gets expensive. And even, I don't even know how our parents fed us in those days, but we were well taken care of and they tried to treat each one of us like their children. So what we did was we got I would say group gifts. We got gifts for the whole family, gifts that we can all enjoy. And 2 of them I remember very, very fondly. And the first one was when we got our first dog. And we named him Comic because he made everybody laugh. And we spoiled that dog. Everybody tried to, showered love and affection on the dog, and I think we almost fed the dog to death because we were each one of us sneaking him chicken or meat or something, and so that year was such a wonderful Christmas. I just spent so much time with the dog while everybody else was trying to spend so much time with the dog. And another year, we got a ping pong table. Well, one year we got a pool table, then one year we got a ping pong table, and that was also a lot of fun because you just play ping pong for hours. I mean, when you have to rotate between this many people, and we just had so much fun. So, and like I said, a lot of food, a lot of drinks, things that you don't normally get to eat, and things like that. Get a lot of it during Christmas. Nigeria is not a society that's big on dessert. It just not that common. But during Christmas, the sweets, the candy, the chocolate, the cakes, they come out. So that was another part of Christmas that we all looked forward to.
That sounds wonderful. I noticed that when you were talking about comic your dog, you got a little emotional there for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
That was a special dog. Wow. Yeah.
I bet. And well fed with all those people sneaking stuff under the table.
Yeah.
One thing I do picture is 17 people lining up to use the bathroom on Christmas morning.
Right, exactly. Yes. We the house was such that we had like the main house, and then we had two other, they used to call them guest chalets in Nigeria, or boys quarters, or so we had bathrooms in each one of those places, and some of the uncles will stay in one, some of the aunts will stay in the other one, and so we're always running around and trying to find an empty bathroom.
Well, wonderful memories, because I think about, you said there's so many people, it's like built-in fun, so that you had
Yes,
these community gifts.
exactly.
So not
Yeah.
only did you have a great game like, ping pong or pool, but you had a built-in group to play it with.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, soccer, because everybody plays soccer in Nigeria. All you needed was a ball and a little bit of grass in front of the house. And yes, so that was also, but that was constant.
Baba, do you still follow some of those traditions from Nigeria in your home in the United States now?
Well, kind of, but not exactly. Because one of the reasons is that we're so much smaller now. Well, we only had two daughters, and they're now adults. So they're no longer in the house. So we're empty nesters. But when they were young, we tried to have as many people as possible home during the holidays. We always spent Christmas at home, and we always invited so many people. And of course, we did individual gifts for the children. I mean, there were only two of them. At most, maybe we might have three or four other people joining us, and we, we'll take care of them. But even then, one thing that we do, that we still do till today, is send gifts to our nieces and nephews, and just try and make Christmas a little special for them. Doesn't matter whether they're in England or in Nigeria. We've been blessed, and we just feel encouraged to bless others too. And one of the things that we also did when we had our first child was every Christmas we used to buy matching sweaters, and we'll take a Christmas picture in the matching sweater. And we've done that for the last 27, 28 years. And sometimes I look back and I cringe. When I look at the pictures, I cringe at how ugly some of those sweaters were. But that was our tradition. And but recently, my daughter got married 3 years ago, and now what that means is that she now has another set of parents that she needs to go and visit during the holidays. So we don't always get our Christmas anymore. So, for instance, we're getting out for Thanksgiving this year, but not for Christmas. So so that tradition has not really been, we've not really been able to continue it. And also, they are starting their own tradition, which is fine, which is exactly what they're supposed to do. So, but yeah, we try and have the food, even the Nigerian food. I happen to be a good cook, which is strange for the way that I grew up. I was never allowed in the kitchen. But when I went to England, after many years ago, I lived in England for 5 years. I was forced to cook. So I had to learn how to cook. I became a chef. So I do a lot of the cooking at home, and I cook the traditional Nigerian meals too during the holidays and some other times too. And the girls really enjoy it. So we try and continue some of those traditions.
So you're blending some new traditions in with the old, and you're making them special. Do you speak on FaceTime or Zoom with your family in Nigeria on Christmas Day?
Yes, that's another thing that's big on Christmas Day, phone calls. I feel bad for my parents because every single person that's ever lived with them calls them on Christmas Day. So they just spend almost like the whole day on the phone because everybody wants to say hi. So yes, FaceTime, which is not that common, but what we use the most in Nigeria is WhatsApp, which is like another video messaging app, which we all use for video calls and voice calls. My sisters and I, my four sisters, we all have a WhatsApp group, so we're always in communication, especially during the holidays. But really, almost every day that we're talking to each other and my parents. So yes, so we do that. We everybody wants to see what the Western world looks like, so we're always showing them videos of the table and the house and things like that. So yeah, it's fun.
Well, your parents must be really terrific people because they've raised a really wonderful son. You're a good friend,
Yeah.
and we really appreciate this time for you to spend with us and share your Christmas memories of Nigeria. And
Wonderful memories.
yeah. So thank you very much, Baba. We appreciate your time, and I hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas to you and your large family
Yes.
all over the world.
Amen. Thank you very much, James. I wish you the same. And I think it's going to be a cold one, so I will be heading to Florida in a few weeks to try and escape the New Jersey cold weather and try and experience more of Nigeria weather in Florida.
Thanks, Baba. Have a great day.
You too. God bless.
I'd like to now welcome Marje Zayas to our show. Welcome, Marje.
Thanks for having me, James. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's a pleasure to speak with you. This is our Christmas podcast. And
yeah, it's very exciting.
Yes,
yeah.
And we're excited to hear about Estonia. You live there now. You lived in the United States for quite a while as well, but you were born and raised in Estonia. Tell us a little bit about the country.
Well, it's a very small country. And when I was born in 1983, I'm sorry for giving my age, but during that time, Estonia was part of Soviet Union. And it's also part of Baltics. So it's Northern Europe. It's a beautiful country, especially because we're talking about Christmas. It's a beautiful country to visit during Christmas time. We have one of the best kept medieval centers in the world. So it's a magical time. We have a beautiful Christmas market there. So around 200,000 visitors, I would say, come to see it every year. So beautiful place to grow up and beautiful place to visit as well.
What about the weather during the month of December? What's it like?
Well, it varies now. It's been a little bit warmer, but it's usually very cold and snowy and dark. So all the things that you kind of need for a magical Christmas, because it's a season of lights. So all the lights can shine because it kind of works with the weather and the conditions.
So what about traditions in Estonia as you approach the Christmas season? What kind of things happen there?
Well, I think with Estonia, there's a lot of traditions that have merged through occupations and different things that Estonia has gone through. So I would say there's three traditions that kind of merged together. One is the winter solstice, which is an old tradition that Estonia had for, hundreds of years. And then we had the Soviet time. And I'm sorry, that's not really the tradition that was merged, but it's more like the Christian faith. So it's the winter solstice, Christian faith, and then also the consumerism type of situation where it's all about gifts and abundance and giving. So those three things, I would say, kind of make up the current Christmas in Estonia.
Typically, is Christmas celebrated on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve? Which one is more common to actually have people over and do the big celebration?
It's more the Christmas Eve. Funny thing is that we usually give gifts also at Christmas Eve. So the typical American Santa Claus story where Santa Claus comes from the chimney on Christmas Eve and delivers the gifts for the Christmas morning, it doesn't really work. So in Estonia, it's more like the Santa Claus comes over on Christmas Eve with the gifts in the bag, or he'll leave the bag behind the door, or an elf will come and deliver the gifts. So it's a little bit different timing. So we've tried to merge different things with our families because my husband is American and I've been there, and I think the influence is quite big. So we've merged a couple of things, but we definitely have a little bit of celebration on Christmas Eve, and then we do the typical American pancakes and bacon and American, Christmas morning as well.
So as far as church goes, do you go on Christmas Eve or do you go Christmas Day?
Usually Christmas Eve. It kind of fits somewhere in there. But with the last years, there's been COVID and things, so we try to do something outside, little celebration. But yeah, usually it's Christmas Eve that people go to church.
So tell us about your childhood in Estonia. You mentioned you were under Soviet rule when you were, I guess, up until you were 6 years old, right?
Yeah. I don't have a lot of memories from that time. I don't know why. I was talking to my sister, and she's 10 years older, and our memories of Christmas are very different. But in matter of fact, Christmas was not really celebrated during those years because it was considered a Christian holiday, and religion as such was not really allowed. It was kind of frowned upon. So some of the Christmas traditions were intertwined with New Year's celebration, which is called Naarid. It's an Estonian tradition. So everything that was Christmas, which is jõulud, was kind of replaced with the word Naarid, even like the Christmas Santa Claus, which is in Estonian literal translation would be like Old Christmas, was changed with like Old Naarid. So we still celebrated it, but it was a little bit different. And then once in 1991, when Estonia gained its re-independence, then Christmas was kind of moved back to the December, with the birth of Christ, going to church and such as that. So my memories are more from that time, I would say, as I grew older and have, more awareness of things.
Do you have some specific memories that, whether they be gifts or people or little family traditions that your family had that you remember?
When I was around 7 years old, my father and mother split. So Christmas was something that was very special to us because she was a single mom at that point. So she really tried her best and made a lot of effort so that we would have something to open, and that the food that we eat would be more plentiful. So there was a lot of joy, I would say, around that, because like there was excess of things, chocolates and cheese and, things that we didn't daily every day have. So it was a very special time, I would say. I don't necessarily have vivid memories of a specific gift, but just the oneness and the happiness and feeling like it was a special time because of that. And she really, made it special for us that we would have this moment together as a family.
Very nice. What about food? Do you remember specific meals that were made?
Yes, food is very important. And we have something very special called a blood sausage. So blood sausage is something that we all eat. I mean, most of us eat and enjoy. And with that, it would be like pork roast and then sauerkraut and lingonberry. So very typical. And of course, gingerbread cookies, and you would decorate them. So yeah, food is a big part of the celebrations.
Did you have a tree in your house growing up?
Yes. When I was younger, we lived in a farm. That was more like the Soviet time, but we still would bring Christmas tree in, and it would be more closer to New Year's. Now I would say people generally bring Christmas trees into their houses prior to Christmas, but not too early. I think I'm also Americanized, so I kind of want the Christmas to arrive earlier. So sometimes I bring a tree in, and it's not very nice by the time Christmas arrives because it's already dry. And so I'm trying to see if I should get a fake tree so that I can have the feeling of Christmas early, or just wait and be patient and bring my Christmas tree later. But yes, decorating the tree, even in the past, like when I was younger, that was something that we did as a family. And now with the kids, like it's a joyous time. We enjoy it very much.
I think a lot of families go through that big decision over the fake versus real tree. And we've gone through it in our family to the point. I'm a big holdout for the real tree. It's been kind of mixed within our family. But, when I think of it, a real tree can be mulched afterward, really recycled.
Sure. Yeah.
Fake trees got to, it's going to be around forever.
That's right. Yes. It is a dilemma, I do have to say. It's definitely a dilemma. The one thing that I wanted to say that in Estonia also that I feel is a really beautiful tradition that we do is that you usually go to cemeteries in Christmas time and you light candles on the gravesites of your loved ones. And then you just imagine like it's cold outside and you breathe and it's like there's air and then the snow is falling and it's crisp. And then all these candles are lit in the cemetery. It's like peaceful. And it's a beautiful sight to experience. So that's like one of the traditions that I really appreciate, like as a community that we do.
What a wonderful tradition, because you're remembering those who came before you and remembering them fondly, and also bringing the community together, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then another tradition that I think is really fun is that, as the song says, that the Santa Claus is making sure if you're naughty or nice. So in Estonia, we have something called päkapikk, which is an elf. Ironically, it literally means like the ball of your foot length. So Estonian language is a very literal language. So everything kind of is very literal. So it's like the size of the ball of your foot, this person, Bekabik. So he comes during the Advent season that leads up to Christmas. And then you would put your slippers on a windowsill. And then he would put little candies there so in the morning when you wake up, you go and see if you were being nice or naughty. And then if there's candy there, like they're spying on you to see how you're doing. So for me, putting a slipper, not everybody has slippers. So I've kind of adapted the stocking idea. So we leave stuffing the stocking to very last minute. So we use the stocking as a way for the elves to come and spy and put little treats in there for the morning for the kids to find. So I like the slipper idea, like the windowsill and slipper. I think that's really cute. And I remember that from childhood. So I'm trying to kind of mix it together for our kids in some ways.
I like that. It also gives mom a lot of leverage over the kids, doesn't it?
Yes. How to get them behave, right? Mm-hmm. Exactly. A little manipulation there for sure.
Do they still in the village that you're in, the town that you're in now, do they still do the cemetery visits?
Well, it's their cemeteries are like in Dailin, so yeah, it's everywhere. It's a very common tradition. Like people, if they can, they'll go to cemeteries and put the candles in. Yeah. Are
there any folk songs that are popular at Christmas, or do they hold on to more of the old traditional hymns?
I think it's very like globalized. So a lot of songs, taken from English, and we have Silent Night. It's just translated into Estonian. Yeah, obviously there are some Estonian songs as well, but I'm not as familiar with them. I'm part of a choir, and we're trying to kind of like bring that tradition back because the globalization is so kind of like wears you out a little bit. So you want to be original. So we're trying to introduce maybe those little nuggets from back in the day into the music culture and such. So it's a beautiful thing.
That definitely is. And, you and I attended the same church in New Jersey together, and you've got a beautiful voice, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm sure they're benefiting from that. Now, you said it gets dark a long time in the winter. So is it like what time would the sun go down in, say, mid to late December?
Well, late December, it's starting to get better. Around December 21st, that's when you start to breathe because the days are getting slowly longer. But it's funny because today I was asking because I was getting ready for this podcast, and it seemed like it was so late. And my husband has a home office at this point, so he came down for something downstairs in the kitchen, and I go, "Hey, what time is it?" Because it felt like he was finishing with his work, which is around 5:30, and he goes, "Oh, it's just 3:30." And I'm like, how is that possible? Because it's just so dark outside. You feel like it's like time to put the kids to bed and such. But yeah, it goes dark very fast. I would say probably around 3:34-ish. It's already gloomy. It's like darker. Not a fun time. I don't really like it. But today we got snow, which was excited because it's very important for the Christmas feeling. Nobody wants Black Christmas. We all want White Christmas here. It's something that we all yearn. We want the snow.
I think it's the same here in the United States, particularly in the Northeast. In New Jersey, of course, as you know, we can have mild Christmases, and then we can get socked with heavy snow. So it's kind of a, you don't know what you're going to get in a year. But so it is cold in Estonia during Christmas time, right?
Yes, usually it is. We've had a surprisingly warm fall. So today was like the first cold day, I would say. It snowed a little bit. And it made everybody very excited because it helps to bear the darkness because the white snow, it reflects and it gives life and it gives you something to do because when it's cold, you can go and you build a snowman and you can do winter sports or something like that. But when it's just wet and dark, it's not very fun to be outside. And Estonians, we need to be outside. Like it's part of our DNA. Like Raphael jokes about it. My husband, he's like, we're like little hobbits, like the connection to the ground and the gardens. And like, it's very important to us, But there's one thing that I wanted to still mention about Estonian tradition that I also really appreciate. And I think even more so that I'm getting older is, usually maybe it's the contrast with the American way is when you get a gift in America, you just accept your gift and you open it. But in Estonia, like you have to do something. you have to do something to get your gifts. Like you can either read a poem or do a little dance, or like there's, like you have to perform to earn your gift from Santa Claus. So I think like that's such a good way to, I guess like to teach kids a little bit, like there's cost to this, or also I felt like it was a good opportunity to perform, and then for some kids who are very shy, like it still gives them, opportunity to do something that fits them. It can be a little stressful on some children that don't like performing at all, but I think it's fun that you have to kind of redeem your gift some way.
I really like that. I think I'm going to implement that this year in our household.
Yeah, I think it's fun because, usually sometimes people, they'll tell a joke or they'll sing a silly song. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything serious, but I like it. I think it's a fun way to give gifts.
So you grew up in Estonia, then you came to the United States, and you were in the U.S. for how long, Nadia?
12 years.
12 years, and now you're back another, 5 or 6 years?
4.5.
Okay. So you mentioned a few things like what you were doing with the kids, some of the traditions, and of course you've got an American husband,
yes,
and you've lived in both countries. So are there things that you're doing now that you haven't mentioned already that you're either adding, or are you becoming a combination of the two traditions, or are you leaning towards one way or the other more?
I really like the Christmas morning, and it just feels special. I think with the Santa Claus perspective, with having the Christmas Eve, it's a little bit challenging maybe to sell this idea to the kids. And I don't even know if it's necessary. I think it's like a magical time. And the truth is very confusing. And that's okay. Because, we emphasize the giving part. And I really appreciate the Christmas morning because it feels like it's intimate. It's not fancy, because Christmas Eve celebration for us, it's fancy. Like you dress up, you just put your best on, and then you're elegant. It's, it's a beautiful, like sit down dinner, usually with, big feast. So the morning aspect, I really appreciate. And I like the Christmas pajama idea that I really feel is very endearing, to go to bed with your Christmas pajamas and you wake up, kind of look the same. Like it's like that unity feel. I think that's like the biggest thing, I would say, from the American perspective that I really, really appreciate.
When I think about Estonia, I'm thinking to myself, Santa's got a lot shorter trip to Estonia, right, than to New Jersey?
Yes. Yeah. Well, during that Christmas market that they have in the medieval, beautiful old town, Tallinn, they also have a Santa Claus house. And a lot of the times, very often, they have like this little fenced up area. There's reindeers are in there. So it's a very magical place. You can take your kids there and see the Santa Claus. We call him Jouluvana, which means like old Christmas, Jouluvana. And then Põhjapõder, which is reindeer. So you can meet them. But yeah, they live very close by.
Well,
yeah,
very magical time, and a magical place, Estonia. And I want to thank you, Marje, for spending this time with us, for telling us about your traditions, your personal memories. And I think it's just fascinating. And I hope that you and Raf and the kids have a really fantastic Christmas, and that maybe you'll get even more snow that you can enjoy and let the moonlight bounce off it and give you some light.
That's right. I hope I'm taking all the snow that you're sending our way. I appreciate it. And it's going to be magical one way or another. And hopefully maybe one year you and Kelly can come and enjoy this beautiful Christmas market, because I know you guys are into these kind of things. So it'll be a lovely thing to experience.
I'm sure it would be. And the medieval village castle sounds absolutely fantastic.
It is.
Thanks again, Marje.
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks, James.
Okay. God bless. Have a good one.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I'd like to now welcome Dara Kelly to our Christmas podcast. Welcome, Dara.
Thank you, James. Welcome to Ireland virtually.
Perfect. Everything's virtual now, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, first of all, I want to tell our listeners that you are my cousin, And we are actually second cousins. Our grandfathers were brothers. We've actually been to Ireland to visit you, and you've been here to the United States to visit us. So just really glad to be speaking with you again, particularly as we approach Christmas.
It's always lovely talking to you and seeing you and spending time with you.
So, Dara, tell us a little bit about where in Ireland you're from.
I'm originally from Dublin, the south side of Dublin. But I live in County Kildare now, which is in a little town called Monasterevin. And I'm living here for, oh my God, nearly 30 years. And it's a little town that only has about 4,500 population. Everybody knows everybody. And if they don't know you, they're related to you. And we're probably second family in this little estate I live in that is not from the town.
Really?
Yeah. It's an estate full of just all local people.
That's kind of cool. And as we get near to Christmas, what starts happening in Ireland around Christmas time? What are some of the traditions that occur as we get closer to December 25th?
Now, around this time of year, you'll start seeing the little towns organizing for Santa to come to visit the town, for the town lights to be switched on, for the crib to go up in the local church. Sorry, I should say before I move on, I'm Roman Catholic. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about church, I'm talking about Catholic churches over here, not all the other ones. But the local churches would all have, as I said, the cribs going in, and they would maybe have a little musical singing going on in the churches for that. But then otherwise, then you'll have, as I said, the Christmas lights going on in the town, and Santa will probably come to visit, and there'll be mulled wine, and everyone goes down just to see the lights going on, the tree going up, and just all have a chat and catch up with everybody.
Now, the Santa Claus that you have in Ireland, how does that Santa compare to the rather round guy with a white beard and a red suit here in the United States? Is he the same as that, or does he look different?
The same guy. He sure is.
Interesting. Because I know in other parts of the world, sometimes St. Nicholas or Father Christmas or Père Noël may look a little different sometimes, maybe look more like a bishop or maybe a little thinner. But so it's the same as the United States then?
Yeah, we have the same big guy.
Is Christmas typically celebrated in Ireland? I should say, do more activities occur on the 25th of December, or do they happen on Christmas Eve?
Christmas Eve is the religious aspect of Christmas for us, where when I was growing up, it would have been more, you'd go to mass, to midnight mass. So you picture maybe a little 7-year-old having to stay up till 12 o'clock and go to mass and maybe not being home till 1 a.m. to want to be up early then for Santa coming. So thank God in the last couple of years, they have changed that in the last, 10, 20 years, where it's maybe 9 o'clock at night is midnight mass instead of midnight.
Much better for the kids.
Much better, yeah. But that's really the only, it's all just about maybe preparing the turkey or the meat or whatever it is and all your vegetables maybe the night before. But otherwise, Christmas Eve is all just about going to mass and getting ready for the next day.
Do the kids typically open gifts when they get back from mass, or is it in the next morning?
Some families have a tradition maybe where you allow them to open one present on Christmas Eve, and otherwise everything's kept till Christmas morning.
Yes, and do businesses often shut down between Christmas and New Year's?
Now in Ireland, shops will probably close early, maybe like 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening on Christmas Eve. But then, and they'll be closed Christmas Day, and then they'll open back up Stephen's Day. Boxing Day. I don't know what you guys call the day after Christmas Day.
Well, really, usually just December 26th.
Okay, well, in England, they call it Boxing Day. In Ireland, we call it St. Stephen's Day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware it is. I think it was called Boxing Day, but I don't think it's not really celebrated here that I know of anyway. But
it's not that we celebrate anything specific, but we do. It's one of our bank holidays.
Yeah. I heard a story, I don't know if this is true, that the church would have a box for the poor. And during the Christmas season, people would put in coins and things for the poor at the church. And then the day after Christmas, they would open the box and distribute, either food that was purchased with the money or distribute money to the poor. Did you ever hear that legend?
It's not something that particularly jumps out at me, but I mean, it's something that's done all the time now. I mean, if you go to mass on a Sunday here in Ireland, there's a plate goes around that you put money in every week, so it's all year round.
So, all right. So let's think about it. So you got a lot of busyness, a lot of activity. Now, what about weather? Tell us about the weather in Ireland in December. What's it like?
It can vary every year. You could wake up Christmas morning and you could have a white Christmas, and it could be 10 years before you'd see that again. I have lived here in Monasterevan for nearly 30 years, and I've only seen a white Christmas twice. So the general Christmas would be cold, and it'll be raining, or it will be just dull and miserable, to be honest. Because it's so, as you know, Ireland weather is very different to, you guys have humidity. We just have cold when it's damp kind of feel to it in winter.
What you get in return, though, is the most brilliant green atmosphere when you go to Ireland. People used to say to me, when you go to Ireland, you're not going to believe how green it is. I thought, yeah, I've heard that before. When we flew to Ireland for the first time back in 1985, and I looked down as we were about to land, and I said, they're right. It is absolutely brilliantly
It
green.
is. And there's so many different colors of green. It's quite unusual.
Well, I hope you get a little dusting anyway, and it's not too much that you don't have to be out there shoveling the driveway.
Yeah, I'd love a little dusting of it. I love snow, and I love it at Christmas. It just brings that extra atmosphere.
So it sounds like in Ireland, people are getting excited for the season, and people are bustling around, much like it is in the U.S. But I'm going to ask you to turn back the clock, to go back to when you were a little girl and think about Christmas in your house when you were growing up. What are some of the traditions that were happening when you were a little kid?
Oh God, I mean, once November hit, Mammy had these two ginormous tubs. I don't even know how to explain them, but these guys were taken out, and she would have spent probably 2 or 3 months buying her fruit, her flour, her whatever else she needed to make her Christmas puddings and her Christmas cakes. And after dinner of an evening, all this would be taken out, laid on the table, and these tubs were filled with the fruit. So bags and bags of sultanas and raisins and maybe mixed peel and nuts and you name it, these were emptied into the tub. Then whiskey would be poured over them, and they would be left for a couple of days to brew with the whiskey on them to let the whiskey absorb into all the fruit. And then a couple of days later, then she'd start mixing the actual cake mix, and that had to be mixed into this fruit. Now, I don't know, you wouldn't have an arm, you wouldn't be able to lift your arm by the time you were finished, because I'm talking, I mean, this tub was probably 3 foot by 2 foot wide, and you'd have to stir the mixture into all this fruit. So imagine the weight of all this fruit, and you're trying to stir the mixture in. So we all had to take turns of stirring this, and then she'd have all of her tins lined out. There could be 20 cake tins on the table because she made Christmas cakes for everybody. I don't think I had an aunt or uncle who made their own Christmas cakes because they knew Mammy was going to make it for them. So they got filled then, and she'd, over a day or two, bake all those cakes. And then once the cakes were baked, then it would be start off the same process again to do the Christmas puddings. So that was a big deal. They had to be got ready so that she'd have them all to leave them for a couple of weeks before she'd have to marzipan them and ice them for everybody.
Well, you know what? I recall that we received one of those fruit cakes.
Did you?
Yes, it made its way across the Atlantic Ocean to our household, and it was delicious. And I think, did I remember hearing that your mother said that they could keep for up to like 25 years or something like that?
Yeah. Well, as you know, Mom passed a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big lover of Christmas puddings. And I had a Christmas pudding from her that was still in the press from the Christmas before that she died.
Aww.
And I actually gave it to my brother the Christmas then after she died, so we'd have a Christmas pudding that year.
Oh, great.
And seemingly he hasn't eaten it. He still has it as well. He wouldn't eat it. I keep saying it's going to go off, Dave. You have to eat it sometime.
So the Christmas puddings was a big part of your preparation. What else was going on? It was
the preparation because we were going to be going visiting the relatives then. Because once the Christmas cakes were ready and she had iced them and they were all decorated and she bought all her presents, as soon as the beginning of probably December came, you were going to visit the different relatives then to drop off the cake and the presents, because she'd probably maybe get 2 or 3 relatives in each week, because it was a 3 or 4 hour visit. You know what I mean? You'd have to sit down at the kitchen table and have the chat and the cup of tea, and So it wasn't just I'll drop the cake off to Auntie May or to Auntie Kathleen. It was an outing.
It was. It was going not just to deliver the fruit cake, but to actually, these are people, your mom used to really take family seriously. She loved to communicate with family. Your mom and dad used to call us on Christmas. You still do now. The family, even after she passed, you still call us on Christmas, which is wonderful. But family was so important to your mom.
Very much so.
So as you got closer to Christmas, what would happen?
Well, there was always the trip into town to go visit Santa. And it was, the shop isn't there any longer. Well, the building's there, but not the shop. It was a shop called Switzer's. And they had a gorgeous window displays all the way around. And you could be maybe queuing for an hour to go visit Santa. But they had all the windows displays moved. So we never minded standing for an hour out in the cold, because we were enjoying watching the other people going around. The lights were on, because Dublin City is quite pretty at Christmas with all the Christmas lights on. So we queue and we go for that. That was always a memorable day. And then obviously the Christmas tree always had to be put up as well. And here in Ireland, something, I don't think any other country does it, but we have a thing called a Christmas toy show.
Okay.
So the way you have your chat shows. I'm trying to think one of your most popular chat show guys in the evening.
Oh, a talk show.
Who would you have?
Talk show host.
Yeah.
Like,
but the way they have maybe 2 or 3 people come on and do interviews.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we have a program here called the Late Late Show, run similarly to what you're talking about. But the presenter of that Late Late Show does the Late Late Toy Show once a year. So they work in conjunction with the big local toy stores, I suppose, like Toys R Us or whatever. Yours is Toys R Us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Over here, ours is Smith's, and I can't remember, Ken Black's. So they literally fill the studio with toys. They bring small children in who play with the toys, who have maybe got certain toys a couple of weeks previous. And these children then will talk about the toys they had and the experience they had with the toys and what toys they liked and stuff like that. And then they'll have a section about children's books, and they'll talk about the books they read. And then they'll bring on more children to try like the trikes and the bikes that are out this year. But it's just a fun family entertainment. There's music on it, and there's normally some big surprise on it where I don't know, they might bring a celebrity on to meet some child who's always wanted to meet that celebrity and give them a present or invite them to a concert or invite them to a football match or things like that. It's just a nice family thing, but it's huge in Ireland. So, I mean, we have a population of about 5.5 million in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say 2.5 to 3 million people watch the Late Late Toy Show. I don't know. I don't find it as enjoyable as I did growing up, obviously. But I kept it as a tradition that I still do it with my children. And it's obviously been commercialized a lot more than when I grew up. So when I grew up, the fire would be lighting, we'd sit down, we'd have a cup of tea, maybe a packet of crisps or biscuits or whatever it would be, and we'd watch it. And we loved it. And then you went to bed and you got to stay up late. The old days are always seem better to us, don't we, as we get older?
You're right. We always say simpler times. I don't know if they really were simpler, but they seemed to us anyway, didn't they?
I suppose that's every generation, because I know, obviously, I would see my children they're nearly adults now, they're 20 and 21. And obviously, I probably have bought them a lot more presents for Christmas than my mom and dad would have been able to buy us, because back in the 70s and 80s when I was small, things were harder in Ireland. But then again, she would have thought she was buying us a lot more than she got, because she'd talk about how she was delighted if she woke up and there was an orange in her Christmas stocking,
Yeah, definitely. Now when you were,
and her Christmas stocking was a pair of pantyhose hanging from the side of the fireplace,
They made it work.
Or we call them tights over here. I was trying to make sure I got the right word for you.
That works. Oh, wow. Now, Dara, I visited you and your family back in 1985, as I mentioned, and I remember your house, and it was in Dundrum, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that well, and I remember your grandfather lived with you back then.
he did.
He did. So just take me through, say, Christmas Eve. What would happen right through Christmas Day?
Well, Christmas Eve, everything would be, we'd all get ready to go to Mass. We'd go to Mass. Before we would have gone to Mass, Mom probably would have peeled the carrots and put the Brussels sprouts in a pot and put the ham in a pot to steep overnight. The turkey would be ready to go into the oven the next morning. All the veg, everything would be ready. She prepared the night before. Then we'd get ready to go to midnight Mass. Granda would, I have to be honest, my Nana lived with us too, but because I was 7 when she died, I don't have great memories of
Right.
her, we'll say, traditionally wise.
Yeah.
But Granda, we'd all come to Mass. Uncle Jimmy, which was my Granda's brother, he would come and stay as well. And we'd all go to Mass. And then the next morning, probably because I was the youngest, because there's a bit of an age gap between myself and my brother and sister, I'd be first up, obviously.
Of course.
No, sorry, Mom was always first up. She'd go down at maybe 6 a.m. just to turn the turkey on in the oven and to get the firelight and so the house be nice and warm. Because when I would have been small, we probably wouldn't even have radiators for heating in the house. Do you know what I mean? So you had to light the fire to try to heat the house up. So she'd make the breakfast. Now, we weren't allowed to open the presents until we had our breakfast. But once we had our breakfast, then we were allowed to go to open all the presents. And once the presents were open, then it was about a matter of getting ready then for the Christmas dinner a couple of hours later and helping Mammy do whatever needed to be done and making sure the dog got brought for a walk and making sure Granda got his cup of tea or whatever he wanted and to give her a bit of freedom and play with our toys then or whatever we got. And go maybe call it to friends to see what they got before we'd have to go home and help again. Yeah.
So you would be playing with your toys the rest of the afternoon. Were there people in and out during the day, or was it the central
Yes, Auntie
family?
Carmel, Auntie Betty, they'd all come to see Grandad. So I don't know what they must have had a later dinner because we already always had our dinner around 1 o'clock. Where I think Auntie Carmel and Auntie Betty had like afternoon, Uncle Seamus had later dinners because they'd be over anytime from about 11 o'clock in the morning. There would be just an influx of Auntie Carmel visiting, Auntie Betty visiting, Uncle Seamus and Auntie Rose maybe popping up, Betty from down the road coming up, Everyone would just pop in. But they all knew that to be kind of gone by 1 o'clock. Now, a lot of families, people would visit and they obviously have a drink, maybe a glass of wine or a bottle of champagne. We wouldn't have grown up that way. Our house was very much a teetotal kind of house. My mom didn't drink, my dad didn't drink, my granddad didn't drink. So they wouldn't really have pulled out. The cup of tea would have been made or a cup of coffee,
Yeah. So do you have any particularly interesting gifts that you got that you remember as a little kid? Wow, I love that.
I did have a dollhouse, which I loved very, very much. But outside of the dollhouse, I suppose one of my other things that I always loved, and even though she's only little, I kept her.
Oh my goodness. You are now, for those of you can't see this, but I can see it. Dara is holding up this little doll. It's blonde and it's got like a little dress on. It's made out of plastic.
Well, Mommy had to make the dress because she's actually kind of naked without it. So my mom made this little dress out of a piece of material just to cover up her bits. But she makes noise, so I hope you can hear.
Yep. Oh,
she says, "Carry me on portable."
Carry me on portable. So,
hang on. Are you silly too? And then she does another one where she says, "I'm pretty tricky." So I presume if you Google "I'm pretty tricky," I think you might find her what she really looks like. But I have her, and I am 50 years of age, and I got her when I was only maybe 4 or 5. So I still have her.
Oh, that is great. So really, you can easily transport yourself back to another time and the feeling that you had when you got that toy and what it meant to you. I mean, I have some of those around my house, and they still bring back memories of Christmases that were very special. See, your mother had an orange, and you have that little doll.
Mm.
No, they weren't really big, expensive items, but boy, do you remember them, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
and cherish
You do.
them. Dara, are there anything specific to what you used to do as a kid that you've brought to your house today?
Oh yeah, well, I was always, because I was the youngest, I was always allowed to put the fairy on the top of the tree. So, or the angel, sorry, not the angel. So of course, once I had my own house, I made sure I had an angel for the top of my tree. And then we always had a crib at home, and I was allowed with baby Jesus in the crib. Then after coming home from midnight mass, I was allowed to put baby Jesus in the crib. So I always make sure I have a crib. That was one of the first things I bought. And then the kids, because I have two children, they take turns. Well, maybe not now, but they took turns when they were smaller of whose turn it was to put the angel on the tree. And my son had the best memory ever, because every year it would become like, oh God, whose turn is it to put the angel on the tree? And he'd remember whose turn it
Oh, you
was
would.
every time. Yeah. So we still do that. And we still all meet. I mean, even though I live in Monasterevin, my dad lives in Wexford. We'll go down to him Christmas morning. We'll have Christmas dinner with him, and between my sister, myself, and dad, we'll do everything. You know, we keep a lot of the traditions. To be honest, I don't make a Christmas cake or Christmas pudding. I probably would if I liked them, but I actually don't like them, so I just don't bother making them.
That's funny because
But
I love fruitcake. I absolutely love fruitcake. And people make a joke of it over here. A lot of people say it's like that gift that nobody wants to get, and you pass it on to somebody else. And I absolutely love it with a cup of tea. It's the best.
yeah,
So make one and send it to me.
do you know what one I'll make you? I'll make you. Mama used to do a boiled fruit cake, where you boil the fruit, but when you boil the fruit, you boil it in Guinness,
Oh, now that sounds really good.
and then you mix it with the cake mixture. So yeah, I'll make you one of them ones.
Well, that is fantastic. So do you have plans for this Christmas?
Yeah, so the kids and I are going up to Dublin Zoo. There's lights on in the zoo at night. So we're going for that for a walk the week before Christmas. So, and then on Christmas morning, we'll get up like we always do, and we'll open all our presents, and we'll sit and chill and have breakfast and yap. And then we call to a friend's house, and then we drive down to Wexford to my dad. My sisters, Jennifer, will be staying with dad. So we'll have Christmas dinner with them. Then we'll leave after a couple of hours, and we'll head up back up. We'll head up to Dublin to go visit Clive's family. And normally then we have a couple of drinks there and play cards for the night until we head home.
Oh, I like that. That sounds like a
Yeah,
lot of fun. Wow.
yeah.
Dara, it's just really been enjoyable speaking with you. Maybe you'll get some snow this year, actually.
I'll call you if we get some,
Could you?
just to show you.
And I'll send you some of ours if we get any.
Please, would love some.
Thank you, Dara. And really, God bless. And I hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas this year.
You too, James, and lovely talking to you as always.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, sweetheart. Bye.
I'd now like to welcome John Lucky Luckadoo to our special Christmas podcast. Welcome, Lucky.
Thank you, Jim.
Great. Lucky, I want to ask you about where you're from. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born and raised on Missionary Ridge in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
And what was it like there when you were a kid? Was it very mountainy or what was it like?
My memories of the climate there are not very pleasant. It was overcast, it was foggy and cloudy. Much of the time we had rain, and it was depressing upon me as a child. And I thought, gee whiz, I'd like to see someplace with sunshine. And if I ever get out of here, I don't intend to come back. And little did I know that I would end up flying in even worse weather in England in combat.
That's right. You had quite the experience and adventure serving our country during World War II. And we actually have your story on another one of our podcasts, which I encourage people to listen to. But when you were a kid, what do you remember about your area, like where you lived? Was it rural? What was it like?
No, it was urban. We lived not actually in the city, but in the suburbs. And Missionary Ridge was largely built out from residential properties. It was, as you may or may not know, a very important site for a war or a battle during the Civil War.
Right.
And right outside my grade school window was this large park on the top of the ridge that contained all of these statues, larger than life size, cannons and cannonballs, and large tablets that explained the battle. And also, one of the unusual things that we played on was a 5-story steel observation tower that General Bragg had built so that he could observe what was going on down in the valley from the Union forces. But it didn't stand him in very good stead because he certainly had the high ground. And I learned many years later that by all rights, the Confederates should have been able to hold that position and not be overrun by Grant, who was in charge of the Army at that point and amassed some 80,000 troops down below the ridge. And he surged up the side of it and actually just chased all the Confederate soldiers completely away.
Wow. So you're from a really historic area then in Tennessee.
It was.
Yeah. What do you remember about the town that you were in at Christmas time? What do you remember it looking like?
As many towns in the South did, they decorated the downtown areas with lights and banners, and they had a Christmas parade, usually if the weather permitted it. And I remember that Christmas was a pretty festive time. We didn't normally have a white Christmas. It doesn't snow that frequently in that part of Tennessee, as a rule. But then weather's so unpredictable, you never know what it's going to be like in any place.
Lucky, if I remember from our previous interview, when we talked about your war experiences, you were born in 1922. Is that correct?
That is correct. March 16th.
March 16th. So when we talk about your memories as a child, we're talking about maybe the late 20s or into the 1930s. We're talking about the Great Depression time, aren't we?
We certainly are. My family felt that probably more keenly than most families because my father's business was as an independent stockbroker.
Ooh, ouch.
And so our assets, or our net worth, I guess, was almost totally represented in securities. And when the market crashed in October of 1929, I was 7 years old. And I recall that the good life that we had enjoyed in my youth was severely impacted by the loss of our net worth, as it were. And my father lost a lot of friends who just couldn't withstand the pressure of being wiped out financially, and many of them committed suicide.
That's awful. Yeah, so many people were affected. I mean, you have one way of life, and then next thing you know, everything's all different.
It had an immediate effect on the Christmas of 29.
Right away then.
My dad raised show horses, Arabian show horses, and he had a stable of about 5 of them, about a mile from our home there on the ridge. And of course, those were gone. My mother had a second car, and that was gone. My brother was in private school, and he was taken out because we couldn't afford the tuition. And so there were immediate we lost our ponies and we lost our small horses that my older brother and sister rode. So we were aware and couldn't escape it. I had a younger brother that was 2 years younger than I, and he doesn't remember much about it at all, or didn't. He's no longer with us, but the older children probably felt it more keenly than the younger two, myself and my younger brother.
That would certainly be the case, but I'm thinking about when you did celebrate Christmas, even during those tough times. Do you remember what you actually did to celebrate?
Well, we had festivities and activities connected with our school that were very, very much a part of that celebration. Of course, we got a Christmas vacation and we're at home. But the first Christmas in 1929, I remember was pretty stark and dismal because we didn't have all of the festivities, we didn't have the parties, we didn't have the gifts, and it was very apparent that the world had been very pointedly changed with that event.
Do you remember getting any little gifts at all during that time?
Well, I remember that one of the things I wanted and asked Santa Claus for was a bicycle.
Oh.
And instead of getting a new bicycle, I got one that had been rebuilt. That was, I'm sure, a lot less expensive than a new Wright Flyer, which was one of, or a Schwinn coaster brake bicycle. So it wasn't a total disappointment, but it was a come down.
But at least it rode. You're able to ride at places, right?
I was able to ride it, yeah.
Do you recall having other family members over, like grandparents or aunts and uncles, to the house at all for Christmas?
Well, my grandparents were no longer living. And so, yes, we did have some aunts and uncles who would celebrate with us. But largely it was a circle of friends that my family had that were more likely to join us for Christmas dinner. And even the preacher of our church was a frequent dinner guest at our home.
Nice. Was your mom a good cook?
Seemed to me she was. She didn't claim to be, but she always made things taste pretty good to us.
Oh, wonderful. Lucky, thank you for telling us about some of your memories about Christmas when you were a kid, but I want to ask you about when you went overseas to fight in World War II. You were a co-pilot on a B-17 bomber. When you were over in Europe, were you in Europe during a Christmas season?
I was there for Christmas of 1943.
Yeah, what was that like? How did you celebrate that?
Didn't celebrate it, really. I was functioning as a squadron operations officer. We were not really, we didn't stand down for Christmas. We still flew raids. We still had missions. And as a operations officer, I was responsible for rehabilitating the airplanes to get them airworthy and combat ready as soon as we possibly could when we came back from a raid. So it was not, we did have some recognition of Christmas, of course. We had Christmas dinner served in the mess hall. We also raised a few at the officers club, a few glasses. So it wasn't completely ignored, but it was certainly not celebrated in any outlandish way or any large way, because it was, for all intents and purposes, just another workday for us.
Yeah.
We brought in some of the local children to show them what Christmas was like on an air base, and had a Santa Claus for them and gave them little gifts. So that cheered us up and cheered them up, I think, because Christmas was pretty dismal for the local people as well.
Yeah. When you say local, this was in England. Whereabouts in England was this?
Thorpe Abbotts was our base, and there were several smaller towns in the immediate vicinity, Dickleburg and Diss and Thorpe Abbotts itself, which no longer exists as a town. But it was originally a farming community, of course, and we took those over as airfields, and they made airfields out of them. And that was the background for Thorpe Abbotts and the base that we flew from.
Right. Now, did you get any care packages from home for Christmas? Did things arrive in the mail for the soldiers?
They did, but with such irregularity. It was not reliable. They couldn't be assured that it would even get there by Christmas or 6 months later or several weeks later, particularly if it was foodstuffs. If they sent cakes or cookies, things of that sort, I think they got broken open and enjoyed by people in the interim more than the intended recipient.
Oh boy, I tell you, did you feel particularly homesick at Christmas, or were you just so absorbed in doing your job and doing your mission?
Basically, I was so focused on what I had to do and trying to do it as well as I possibly could that I really didn't have much room for homesickness.
No, you had to get your job done. Lucky, when you got home and you got married and you raised your family, do you have any particular fond memories of Christmases when your kids were little? Well, you have a daughter, right?
Yes, she received all of our attention and affection, and that tends to spoil an only child, I think, because they don't have to share anything with any siblings, and that was just never the case in my immediate family. But when I was growing up, it was quite different, and I was accustomed to vying for the privilege of licking the pan or the bowl that my mother was using to make the fruitcakes, or we fought like tigers to be the first to get to lick the bowl or the remains. Things like that were so much a part of my life that when I only had one child and we brought her up, we were trying desperately not to spoil her and think that she was the only one. And so we arranged to have her give gifts to other children who were less fortunate and tried to impress upon her the importance of the fact that she wasn't the only one in the world.
Well, that makes sense, because when there is one child, it is easy to spoil them because they're the focus, right?
There's nothing else to focus on.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, Lucky, this has been a lot of fun speaking with you. Any opportunity I have to speak with you is great. And you're a hero. You're a good friend. And thank you for sharing your Christmas memories from going back to the 1920s and the Great Depression through the war and even more recent years. But thank you so much for speaking. And I hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas, Lucky.
My same to you, Jim, and all your family. Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
Thank you, and God bless.
Same to you.
Perfect. You're an inspiration to me, Lucky.
Thank you, Jim.
Wow, those were great stories. I am so privileged to have been able to interview those folks and hear their stories about their childhood Christmases from around the world. I hope you enjoyed those stories as much as we did. But I do have one last story to share with you, and it's a story from my childhood and my favorite memory of Christmas. The year was 1966. I was 8 years old. My family was preparing to go to church that evening for our Christmas Eve services, and there was a prediction of a rather significant snowstorm that night in New Jersey and New York area. I was a little worried about our usual tradition being disrupted. The tradition was my grandmother and grandfather, they were my mother's parents, they usually came by on Christmas Eve. Their chauffeur was my Aunt Audrey, and the three of them would come up and spend Christmas Eve with us. It'd really be an evening of sitting around the bright lights and the fire in the fireplace and just chatting and having little hors d'oeuvres and things like that. It's just a special time. We were also joined by a close family friend named Margaret. Margaret would come up and she would usually bring a gift with her. At this point, I did believe in Santa Claus, but I also knew that people shared gifts with each other as well. Well, that evening we went to church, and I knew at the time we got there that it had already started snowing. And I was really nervous that evening was going to get foiled. I even thought maybe Santa Claus wouldn't be able to arrive himself. I remember myself thinking about the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer cartoon, where Santa almost had to cancel Christmas because of a snowstorm. I thought, oh no, this can't be happening. Anyway, when we got out of church, it had really started to snow hard. And we kind of skidded our way home, and I was really upset thinking that we just would spend it sort of alone, just the four of us, my parents and my brother and I. But much to my happiness, when we pulled in front of our house, I saw my aunt's 1966 Chevy in front of our house, and we walked into our living room, and they were sitting there already. They had let themselves in, and I was overjoyed to see them. You could smell the Christmas tree when you walked in the living room and see the lights, and I smelled my grandfather's cigar. And right after that, our friend Margaret pulls up. She walks in the front door and dusts her feet off, takes her boots off, and then she presents me with a long rectangular box, all neatly wrapped in Christmas wrapping. When I anxiously tore off the wrappers, I found, much to my joy, a brand new Yogi Bear stuffed animal. This is something really, really great because my old Yogi Bear had been pretty much torn to pieces. I'd had it so long. I loved this thing, but to be honest with you, my favorite part of the evening was just seeing the family there, have a glass of eggnog, some snacks, and hear all the stories from my loved ones. That night I went to bed. I could hardly sleep. And the next morning I woke to a beautiful, beautiful snowy scene out my window. And that day, I believe we ventured down to my grandparents in Bloomfield. And there was a day of food and fun and some more gifts and a lot of old Christmas music playing on my grandfather's phonograph. Anyway, that was a cherished memory of mine. I remember that so well. And I know my whole family had a wonderful Christmas that year, as we did pretty much every other Christmas. And that is my favorite Christmas memory as a child. And by the way, after all these years, I still have that Yogi Bear. His head is kind of fallen off. He's pretty ratty looking, but I still have him. So, on behalf of Kelly and myself and Your History, Your Story, we want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Your History, Your Story. You can connect with us on Facebook and YouTube at Your History, Your Story, or on Instagram and Twitter at YHYS Podcast. We'd love to hear from you if you have any questions, comments, or a story to tell. Be well and God bless.